Unsung Murder Ballads discusses topics of a graphic nature and in graphic detail, and may not be suitable for children under 13. Listener discretion is advised.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Unsung Murder Ballads. This is episode 45. I am Janus Dead.
And I'm Joyous Dead.
So tonight we are going to be covering the case of a spree killer. So we'll just dive right in.
All right, let's dive.
So we're in Chicago in July of 1966. It's late and there's a knock on the door. It's not a usual occurrence, but with so many roommates, someone is bound to forget their key now and then. This townhouse is a dormitory for numerous nursing students, and most of the occupants are actually asleep. Nursing student Corazon Amoro opens the door to see a tall man dressed all in black, pointing a gun at her.
Oh, no.
This is the case of Richard Speck and the terrifying story of how one single decision can hurt so many people. Are you ready?
Well, damn. For some reason, that name sounds familiar to me.
Richard Speck is kind of famous. He was certainly featured on the show Mindhunter, which I don't think you've watched yet. Maybe
I
you
have not.
So yeah, you might have heard some of this. This is it's not a famous case, but it's not an unknown case.
Fair. I mean, we all know that I never know anything about these cases, so
right. Which
I'm always like, huh.
I'm sure you've seen some of the responses we're getting from people on Instagram about your lack of knowledge on serial
I know,
killers.
It was cracking me up. I was like, I feel so seen right now.
But it's okay. I did let them know that we are planning something special for episode 50, just to kind of help educate you a little bit.
Yes, exactly. And you know what? It takes, a neutral observer for a fresh perspective sometimes.
And that's exactly it. Like, I think a lot of us, because we're not going to reveal anything yet, but many of our listeners will know the case we're going to cover for number 50. And how little you know is going to make it fresh listening for all of us, which is kind of exciting.
Well, happy to do my job by knowing nothing.
which is very unusual for you. You typically have a lot of knowledge. So the fact that you don't in this area is both enticing and surprising.
Yeah, listeners, listen, I'm not dumb. I just have never hyperfixated on this.
Which makes sense. I hyperfixate on everything I love. So of course I'm diving in head and feet first.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So Richard Speck was born in Kirkwood, Illinois in 1941, and he was the seventh of 8 children.
Ugh, too many children.
Way too many children. The family moved to Monmouth, Illinois shortly after his birth, and he and his sister Carolyn were much younger than the 4 older sisters and 2 older brothers. So they were kind of close in age, but much, much younger than the rest of them.
Gotcha.
Now, his mother was religious and a teetotaler.
A what?
I had to look that term up as well. A teetotaler is someone that never drinks alcohol.
Oh,
yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I don't know why is it called that? I would just call it a sober person.
I don't know. I saw it when I was researching. I saw the word and I was like, what the hell is? I had to look it up. And once I did, I was like, we're gonna have to educate the masses on what a teetotaler is.
Yeah, for real.
So his father worked as a packer at Western Stoneware, having previously worked as a farmer and a logger, obviously very manual labor oriented.
Mm-hmm.
In 1947, when Speck was 6 years old, his father died from a heart attack at the age of 53.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so there's something to say about having a life full of hard labor right there.
Yeah, it definitely does not let you live long.
Now, Speck was reportedly very close to his father, so obviously this would affect him tremendously. On May 10, 1950, 3 years after the death of his father, his mother married Carl August Rudolph Lindbergh.
Okay, that's quite a name.
Yeah, that was tough. One thing I do want to say about this guy's name, if you take his initials, they spell out Carl, which is his first name.
That kind of slays. That goes hard.
Yeah, I think his parents totally did that on purpose.
I mean, it's original. I'll give them that.
So his mother and Lindbergh had met during a train ride to Chicago, and Lindbergh was a traveling insurance salesman from Texas with a 25-year criminal history that ranged from several DUIs to forgery.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Now, stepfather Lindbergh here was also a hard drinker.
Interesting. And with someone who never drinks.
Correct. And my thought is the only reason she's with him has to be because she has 8 children and no way to support them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Rocking a hard place there.
So Speck and his sister Caroline stayed with their married sister Sarah for a few months so that Speck could finish 2nd grade before joining his mother and Lindbergh in Santo, Texas, which is 40 miles out of Fort Worth, where he started attending 3rd grade. In 1952, Speck's oldest brother, Robert, died in an automobile accident at the age of 23.
Oh, no.
So the family moved frequently, living in 10 different addresses, usually in poor neighborhoods over the course of 12 years.
Damn, sounds like my childhood.
I mean, you weren't in poor neighborhoods. You at
No,
least
we
had
just
that.
moved constantly.
Yeah. Speck loathed his stepfather, who was often drunk, verbally abusive, and frequently absent.
Makes sense.
Speck struggled in school, refusing to wear glasses that he needed for reading. He had to repeat the 8th grade, basically in part because his fear of people staring at him, and he subsequently refused to speak in class.
Oh, yeah, that's tough. That's
Yeah.
not adding up good for him.
No. In August of 1957, Speck started 9th grade, but failed every subject.
Oh, poor kid.
So he did not continue going to school and dropped out in 1958, right after his 16th birthday.
Oh, that's tough.
He did start drinking alcohol at 12.
Ooh.
And by the time he was 15, he was pretty much getting drunk every day.
Yikes. Where's he getting the money for that shit?
I'm guessing he's stealing from the stepfather.
Probably. Yeah, I guess if the stepfather's a heavy drinker, you're 15. Right.
And the stepfather's probably not going to notice the missing alcohol.
Right.
So Speck's first arrest came in 1955 when he was 13 for trespassing.
13? Jesus.
Yeah. For trespassing, which is kind of harsh.
Yeah. To get arrested for that and not just like kicked out.
Right? Or brought home to your parents and let them punish you. That's what happened to me when I was young like that, you know?
When you that happened when you were that young?
We would trespass in places we really shouldn't have been at.
Fair enough.
Like my friends and I had a habit, like if there was like a single story building, didn't matter what was in the building. If it was a single story building, we tried to climb up on the roof.
Mm-hmm.
And there was one place that we were on the roof and we noticed that there was a piece of plywood over something and it was kind of loose. So we didn't know. We just tore it off and didn't realize it set off an alarm. So when the police show up, we're up on the roof just being kids, you know, and they came up and gave us a hard time and brought us home to our parents. Like,
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, don't need to arrest the kids for being stupid.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like we were in there stealing whatever was in the building, if there even was anything in the building, because the plywood suggests to me that it's probably abandoned.
Right, that's probably just boarded up.
Yeah, so either way, that's the kind of stuff that happened to us as kids, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So after that arrest, it was followed by dozens of other arrests for misdemeanors over the course of the next 8 years. So,
oof, that's rough. So his whole like adolescence.
Yeah, he's just getting in lots and lots of trouble. So from 1960 to 1963, Speck worked as a laborer for the 7-Up bottling company in Dallas. In October of 1961, he met a 15-year-old girl named Shirley Annette Malone at the Texas State Fair. She was pregnant after 3 weeks of dating.
Jesus Christ.
This guy's making no good decisions here.
That's insane. Also, like, lucky.
Sure. I mean, I guess.
Like, not bad, not good luck, but some.
Yeah,
I don't know. That's
it's
fast.
certainly like serendipitous. Yeah, I can see.
Yeah.
It. So they got married on January 19th of 1962, which was like 4 months later.
Jesus. Well, yeah. You had to if you got her pregnant.
Yeah. And they had to move in with his sister and her husband.
Oh.
Speck's mother lived there with them as well, having separated from the stepfather, Lindbergh, who was now living in California.
Mm-hmm.
Speck stopped using the name that he was born with and had taken on when his stepfather adopted him, which was Richard Benjamin Lindbergh, went back to using the name Richard Speck.
Mm-hmm.
Now, his daughter, Robbie Lynn Speck, was born on July 5th, 1962, while Speck was serving a 22-day jail sentence for disturbing the peace after a drunken melee.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
So his poor child is born while he's
Yeah,
literally in jail.
Not a good start.
Yeah, not good.
And now that I'm thinking about it, this kid is about 10 years older than I am. So she's probably still out there.
Yeah.
In July of 1963, at the age of 21, Speck was sentenced to serve 3 years in prison after being convicted of forgery and burglary.
Oof. He's not on a very good path here.
No, he's a terrible criminal and probably should have stopped.
Yeah. Probably anyone with a brain would have stopped here. He's not getting away with it.
Yeah, he's very similar to that guy from the Appalachian Mountains, Roy Carr. I don't know if you remember that one. We were all making fun of how much his criminal career sucked.
Oh, yeah.
So Speck had forged and cashed a co-worker's $44 paycheck and also robbed a grocery store for cigarettes, beer, and $3 in cash. That's what landed him in jail.
$44 paycheck?
Yeah. Even in 1963, that couldn't have been worth that much.
Right. That's what I'm thinking.
He was paroled in 1965 after serving 16 months at the Texas State Penitentiary. His release lasted all of a week.
Oh, God. I feel so bad for his wife and child.
I'm sure they've moved on.
Yeah.
He was arrested again on January 9th of 1965 after he attacked a woman in a parking lot of her apartment building where he wielded a 17-inch carving knife but fled when she started screaming. So I'm not sure what he expected to happen there.
Well, I know it's something that they tell you to do in like kind of self-defense.
Right, it makes sense.
To not run away and to start fucking
freaking
acting
out.
Like you're going to be a problem.
Right, but when he jumps out with a knife, did he think she wasn't going to scream?
That's true. I don't know if he was thinking.
Yeah, I don't think he's smart enough to figure it out, to be honest. So the police arrived within minutes and apprehended him just a few blocks away. So in a way, that's also bad luck and timing because the police were close.
Yeah, for real.
He was convicted of aggravated assault and given a 16-month sentence to run concurrently with his parole violation sentence.
Yikes.
Again, concurrently is really just one sentence. I don't know why they bother with that.
Right. I don't really get it.
However, due to a clerical error, he was released after just 6 months.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. Ridiculous.
Fucking clerical error. That's crazy. But I guess that's life before computers, huh?
Basically, yeah. I mean, although it's probably still life today.
That's true.
After his release, he did work for 3 months as a driver for a meat company, which is weird.
He's just doing odd jobs, yeah.
Yeah, he's getting whatever he can. Although while in that company, working for that company, he was involved in 6 car accidents involving the company's vehicles.
Jesus Christ, dude, get it together.
But he was fired for failing to show up.
Wow, that's what he was fired for, not for getting into 6 accidents.
Right?
What the hell? I feel like you're a driver. You're getting fired after the first, maybe the second if we're lucky.
Maybe the second if the first one wasn't your fault. Exactly.
Right.
In December of 1965, upon the recommendation of his mother, Speck moved in with a 29-year-old divorced woman, an ex-professional wrestler, now bartender at his favorite bar, Ginny's Lounge, where he would live and basically pay for his rent by babysitting her 3 kids.
God. This is the guy you want to babysit your kids.
Well, I mean, at the very least, she's at least able to defend herself if she's a former wrestler.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
So she sounds like a kind of a cool person.
Yeah, actually, yeah, she sounds kind of badass.
Yeah.
In January of 1966, his wife, Malone, who had separated from him, finally filed for divorce.
Mm-hmm.
That same month, Speck stabbed a man in a knife fight at Ginny's Lounge.
My God, this guy needs to chill out.
Yeah, he has huge issues. He was charged with aggravated assault, but a defense attorney hired by his mother got the charge reduced to simply disturbing the peace.
Damn, what the fuck?
That's a good lawyer. He was literally fined $10 and jailed for only 3 days.
That's insane.
And
disturbing the peace.
right, and he didn't even bother to pay the fine.
Oh my God. He's
And
getting away with it all.
really is, yeah.
No wonder he never stops.
Very, very true. That was the last time Speck would be in police custody in Dallas.
Okay.
On March 5th, 1966, Speck bought a 12-year-old car, then robbed a grocery store the following night, stealing 70 cartons of cigarettes, which he then sold out of the trunk of the car in the store's parking lot.
What the fuck? like what?
Ballsy.
Like,
Ballsy.
so ballsy. How did he even succeed on selling any of it without getting, I don't know. This is insane.
This is nuts. Exactly. The police traced the car, which Speck had abandoned, and issued a warrant for his arrest on March 8th. Had he been apprehended under the warrant, it would have been his 42nd arrest in Dallas and would have surely resulted in a longer prison term.
For real. I mean, he's like on a first name basis with the police department at this point, I'm sure.
I'm sure, right? They're like, hey, Rich, how you doing?
Yeah, literally.
On March 9th, Speck's sister Carolyn drove him to the Dallas bus depot where he took a bus to Chicago, Illinois. Speck stayed.
Jump in town. That's
the smartest thing he's done so far.
literally.
Speck stayed with his sister Martha and her family in Chicago for a few days. Then he returned to the town he was born in, Monmouth, Illinois, where he initially stayed with some old family friends. His brother Howard was a carpenter and found him a job sanding plasterboard for another company there as a carpenter. Speck became angry when he learned his ex-wife had remarried 2 days after the divorce was finalized.
Go off, Queen.
Good for her, exactly.
Literally.
He moved to the Christie Hotel in downtown Monmouth and spent most of his time in the downtown taverns, basically just wallowing in his pity at his wife getting remarried.
Wow.
At the end of March, while Speck and some acquaintances were on a bar hopping trip, they were detained overnight by police because Speck reportedly threatened a man in the tavern bathroom with a knife.
This man does not know how to chill out for like even a second.
This is the kind of person that scares the shit out of me.
Yeah, he just like won't stop.
Like here's an example. Earlier today, I had to go to the ATM, and when I was pulling up, I mean, it's raining right now, and when I was pulling up, there's somebody standing inside the little booth of the ATM machine, sitting there. And as I pulled up, I debated driving away, but then I was like, you know what? Whatever. Like, I can handle myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I go in and I open the door, and he's clearly a homeless person that went in there to get out of the rain.
Mm-hmm.
But as I'm withdrawing the money, I keep my eye on the guy.
Right,
because we don't know what he's going to do. If that guy was like Richard Speck, anything could have happened.
Yeah.
Speck is the kind of person that really, truly scares the shit out of me, especially because he's not intelligent enough to even care about the consequences.
Right. It's like, and it's just like, it feels random. And it's like, he just is crazy at all times.
Yeah, he just does whatever comes into his head, which in a way was kind of like me as a teenager, but I at least understood consequences.
And like avoided them. Yeah.
Yeah. So on April 3rd of that year, a woman by the name of Virgil Harris, who was 65, she had returned home at 1 a.m. to find a burglar in her house brandishing a knife.
Terrifying.
He was a 6-foot-tall white man who was very polite and spoke with a soft southern drawl. The man blindfolded her, tied her up, sexually assaulted her.
Oh, very polite.
Ransacked her house, and stole a total of $2.50 that she had earned babysitting that evening.
What the fuck? That's awful.
Yeah. Now, obviously, we're not 100% sure that was him, but it's likely that it was.
Yeah. I mean, the burglary, that's a persistent theme.
A week later, Mary Catherine Pierce, a 32-year-old barmaid who worked at her brother-in-law's tavern, was last seen leaving that tavern at 12:20 a.m. on April 9th. She was reported missing on the 13th, and her body was found that day in an empty hog house behind the tavern.
A hog house?
Yeah, like where you keep pigs.
Oh, interesting.
Like
okay.
a pig pen, basically.
The tavern has a pig pen?
Apparently, I mean, it's weird because it's Illinois, so this is kind of confusing to me.
Yeah, a little bizarre, but okay. I guess I'm not focusing on the right thing, which is
Right? It's
that's
okay,
awful.
but it's because it's what stands out. I know.
Yeah, I'm like a hog house? We don't talk about that every week.
No, not at all. Actually, this is definitely a first, unless you count the what was her name? The woman who abused Vera Jo Regal. Her house, they had a pig running around. We could call that a
Oh,
hog
that's
house.
true. You're right. That was a hog house.
Yes. Mary had died from a blow to her abdomen that ruptured her liver.
Oh
Yeah.
my God.
Can you imagine getting punched so fucking hard?
That it kills you.
My God. So Speck had frequented that place, and the empty hog house was one of several he had helped build in the preceding month. So
Oh, yeah, that's very sus.
yes, but the police did briefly question him about her death when he showed up to collect the final paycheck on the work he had done and asked him to stay in town for further questioning.
And
When
naturally, I'm sure he doesn't.
I was going to say, when police showed up at the hotel he was living at to continue speaking to him, they discovered that he had left just hours earlier carrying his suitcases and saying that he was going to the laundromat.
Hmm.
He obviously left town. A search of his room turned up a radio and costume jewelry that was owned by the 65-year-old woman that had been raped, that she had reported missing from her home.
Oh God, why is he fucking keeping that shit?
I don't know. They also found some items that were missing from 2 other local burglaries.
Oh Jesus. Well,
Yeah, he's kind
there
of
we
an
go.
idiot.
He's such an idiot. He's gonna get caught.
If only.
Oh no.
On April 19th, 1966, Speck returned to stay with his sister Martha in her neighborhood in the northwest side of Chicago, where she lived with her husband Gene and their 2 teenage daughters. Martha had worked as a registered nurse in pediatrics before she was married, and her husband Gene worked nights as a railroad switchman.
Hmm.
So now there's some weird jobs, right?
Yeah, I mean, some real vintage ones.
Speck told them an unbelievable story about having to leave, their hometown of Monmouth after refusing to sell narcotics for a crime syndicate.
Oh Jesus, that's quite a story.
Right? Of all the things, there's a million things you could have said.
Right, and that's I guess sometimes the craziest story. I don't know. Truth is stranger than fiction sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah. And if you tell it with enough confidence, which is why con men work so well, but
Right.
now Gene, who served in the Navy, thought that the U.S. Merchant Marines might provide a suitable occupation for Richard Speck.
Oh
So on,
Lord.
so on April 25th, he took Speck to the U.S. Coast Guard office to apply for the letter of authority to work as an apprentice seaman. The application required being fingerprinted and photographed and having a physical examination by a doctor.
Hmm.
Speck found work immediately after obtaining that letter and joining a 33-member crew on April 30th. Speck's first voyage was on the Clarence B. Randall, but it was very brief since he was stricken with appendicitis on May 3rd and had to be evacuated by the U.S. Coast Guard helicopter to a hospital in Hancock, Michigan, which is fucking crazy.
That is crazy.
And he had to have an emergency appendectomy.
Appendectomy?
Thank you. Appendectomy. I'm looking at that going, yeah, that's a word.
That's a word. Yep.
So after Speck was discharged from the hospital, he returned to stay with his sister Martha and her family in Chicago to recuperate. On May 20th, he rejoined the crew of the Clarence B. Randall and served there until June 14th, when he got drunk and quarreled with one of the officers and was put ashore on June 15th.
Idiot.
Yep. For the following week, Speck stayed at the St. Elmo, which is a flop house in Chicago.
A flop house?
It's kind of like a low rent hotel.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. These are weird terms.
No, that's okay. Everybody's learning here.
That's true. Speck then traveled by train, staying at a place called the Douglas House, to visit a woman named Judy, a 28-year-old nurse's aide that was going through a divorce whom he had befriended while staying at the hospital. On June 27th, after Judy gave him $80 to help him until he found work, Speck left again to stay with his sister in Chicago for 2 weeks. For whatever reason, this guy just can't figure out what the fuck to do. Really
Yeah,
frustrates me.
he's a mess.
On June 30th, Speck's brother-in-law Gene drove him to the National Maritime Union to get hired again, and and trying to get him to file the paperwork for his seaman's card. Now, the hiring hall was 1 block away from 5 attached 2-story brick townhouses, 3 of which were occupied by South Chicago Community Hospital senior student nurses and Filipino exchange students. 8 of those nurses lived in the easternmost townhouse, which was the closest to the hiring hall, which is literally 150 feet away. Obviously, put a pin in that.
Yep.
On Friday, June 8th, 1966, Speck's brother-in-law Gene drove him to the hiring hall to pick up his seaman cards and register to be berthed on a ship. Speck lost out on that day to someone who had more seniority than he did, and he returned to his sister's apartment for that weekend. Like, really upset about that. On Monday, June 11th, Speck had clearly outstayed his welcome with his sister and her family. They basically helped him pack his bags, and again, Gene drives him down to that hiring hall. Speck stayed the night at a place called Pauline's Rooming House, about a mile away. And on Tuesday, June 12th, Speck went back to the hiring hall. By mid-afternoon, he received an assignment, which was a 30-minute drive away in East Chicago, Indiana. When he arrived there, he found out that his spot had already been taken.
Oh, that sucks.
Yep. And he was driven back to the hiring hall, which was now closed.
Ugh.
He did not have enough money for a rooming house, so he slept in an unfinished house just off of East 103rd Street.
Yeah, it's a rough situation to be in.
Yeah, I mean, you just find yourself randomly fucking homeless. That's crazy. So on Wednesday the 13th, Speck went back to that hiring hall. He was angry for being sent on a non-existent assignment and talked for 30 minutes in the car with his sister Martha and her husband Gene, who had driven down to see him at 9 a.m. that day. They had parked on East 100th Street next to a place called Luella Elementary School, right across the street from the townhouses where those nurses lived. At 11:30 a.m., Speck said he was tired of waiting for a job. His sister had given him $25, and he left the hiring hall and walked a mile and a half to kind of check in at a place called the Shipyard Inn. And this is, again, another place of rooming houses. It's not really a hotel. They're hard to, the difference is weird to me, but.
Yeah, I guess just a cheap place is probably like a lot smaller than a hotel room.
Right. And my guess is, I guess today it would be more like an Airbnb.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Speck spent the rest of that day drinking in nearby taverns before he accosted someone named Ella Mae Hooper at knife point.
Jesus.
He
can't fucking help himself, can he?
He just can't. She was a 53-year-old woman who had spent the day drinking at the same taverns that Speck had been patronizing.
Oh my God, what's his problem?
Speck took her to his room at the inn where he sexually assaulted her.
Oh.
Stole her black $16 mail order 22 caliber pistol.
Oh, she had a gun?
She had a gun. Yeah, and she didn't use it.
Well, they're not actually that good for self-defense when it's surprise.
That's true. After he assaulted her, Speck left dressed entirely in black, armed with a switchblade knife and her handgun.
Oh, terrifying.
After a dinner at the nearby Kay's Pilot House, Speck returned to drink at the Shipyard Inn's tavern until 10:20 p.m., which is crazy to me that he assaults someone, leaves, and then goes back to drink at the same place.
Yeah, that's fucking crazy.
The fact that she didn't call the police blows my mind.
Yeah, like, I don't know. Maybe she's just like, I don't know, in shock.
Maybe. She's probably happy just to be alive at that point.
Yeah, for real. after a man like accosted her, assaulted her, and then also stole her gun, she's probably fearing for her life.
Yeah, I would definitely be afraid. And she might have been so drunk, she's like, what the fuck happened? She might
Mm-hmm.
have very, very confused. So at approximately 10:20 p.m., Speck walked about a mile and a half to East 100th Street to the nurse's townhouse at 2319 East 100th Street. At 11 p.m. on July 13th, Speck went there and rang the doorbell. These are the events that transpired as told by the lone survivor.
Oh no.
Cora heard 4 knocks on the door. She opened it and saw Speck, very tall, dressed in black, standing in the doorway holding a gun. The bedroom light illuminated his blonde hair. She stared at the gun. Speck pushed her back and asked, "Where are your companions?" grabbing her by the arm.
Oh, what the fuck?
At this point, a woman by the name of Merlita had gotten out of bed and emerged into the hallway. Speck walked both women down the hall to a large bedroom in the back. Flicking on the light, he saw 3 more sleeping women. And those 3 women ran and hid in the closet. So he had Cora or Merlita knock on the closet door, kind of luring these women out, telling them that they wouldn't be hurt if they just did what he said to do. So Speck pointed a gun at all of them. He switched off the light and made the women sit in a semicircle with their backs to the windows.
Ugh, this is like, I don't know, a new level for him. This is really bizarre.
This is fucked up. So Speck sat facing them, smiling. With his long legs and slow Texas drawl, he tried to seem like a buddy and someone closer to their age.
Fucking weird.
He said to them, "I want some money. I'm going to New Orleans." Each asked permission to get their purses and gave Speck all the money that they had. After a little while, another roommate came home from a date with her boyfriend. She staggered up the stairs, somewhat drunk, and opened the door to the bedroom. She screamed when she saw Speck with the gun, but she was forced to join the circle. Speck got up and tore a sheet from one of the beds and began cutting it into strips, and one by one, he tied each woman's hands and feet.
What the fuck?
Speck removed one person and brought her into another room.
This is fucking weird.
2 other nurses came back from a chat session, which I'm assuming is like a study hall, maybe. They opened the door to the back bedroom and found Speck hovering over the other people as he's binding them. And they just started screaming and bolted down the hallway. That's when they realized he's got them tied up in 2 separate rooms. So they're realizing that all of their roommates are tied up. So Speck caught up with them, pushed them in that room, and this is where he stabbed and strangled the 2 that just came back.
Oh, God.
He then washes up and returns to the other room where he had separated the one woman, and he kills her by stabbing her in the heart.
Oh, my God.
He goes back into the bathroom and washes up again.
This is weird.
Yeah, it's fucking crazy. He's got them all under his control, and he's literally just going through, and that's 3 dead so far.
Oh, my God. It's weird. It's weird and methodical.
While he's cleaning up, back in the bedroom, the girls are trying to squeeze themselves under the beds. They're just trying to hide.
Mm-hmm.
So Speck comes back in. He grabs a woman named Nina by the feet, and he drags her down the hallway to a bedroom where he stabbed her in the neck and suffocated her with a pillow.
Oh, God.
Now, Cora, the one who answered the door, she heard her friends like make an ah kind of sound, and then the sound of running water. So Cora at this point struggles, and she gets her entire body under one of the beds, which are very low to the floor, I guess. So Speck returns to the room, and he takes a woman by the name of Valentina, and he doesn't even bother to untie her. He lifts up her 100-pound body and carries her into another bedroom where he kills her.
Oh, my God. This is fucking weird.
It is. It's really fucked up. Once again, once he's done, he goes in the bathroom, cleans up again. He
Ew.
returns, and he takes a woman by the name of Merlita, lifting her up and carrying her off.
Oh, this is so fucked.
5 minutes goes by. Cora, who's hiding under the bed, hears her friend say the word masakit, which means it hurts.
Oh.
30 minutes passes this time. and then she hears the sounds of running water. He then comes back in and he takes a woman by the name of Pat, who was an athletic 150-pound woman. And Cora heard him ask, "Are you the girl in the yellow dress?" Which,
Fuck.
yeah, I know that's really odd because obviously she's not wearing that in the moment.
Right. And it's like,
Which
lots of
makes
people
me
have a yellow dress.
which makes me wonder if he had seen one of them the days before,
It must,
and that's
maybe.
why he targeted it.
It's so weird. Lots of
Yeah.
people have yellow dresses.
It's weird though. Yeah. So Speck led Pat into the bathroom where he punched her in the stomach, rupturing her liver.
What the? This guy punches.
Yeah. And then he strangled her.
Oh my God.
Speck came back into the room. He undressed a woman named Gloria and he sexually assaulted her.
Oh,
Cora had to
fucked
hide.
up rampage.
Cora was hiding under the bed, listening to the bed springs squeaking and groaning, with her eyes closed and praying.
Oh, that's so awful.
After a while, she opened her eyes and realized that Speck was no longer in the room. She decided to switch beds, and she rolled and scooted her way across the bedroom floor, knowing that any moment he could come in and drag her to her death. She made it under the other bed and wedged herself in a tight space against the wall and waited.
Oh my God, the terror.
It wasn't until 6 a.m. that she felt safe enough to crawl out from her where she had hidden overnight, and she found 8 women dead in that apartment.
Oh my God.
Their bodies were heavily bruised from being tightly bound, and they had been brutalized and stabbed.
Oh, that's fucking awful.
Now, Speck possibly lost count, or might have not known, or just known that maybe 8 women worked there and didn't realize that the ninth person was a friend, because he clearly lost track of Cora.
Right, yeah, and like if she was hidden, he was definitely like, and people were coming in, and he's killing people, and then yeah, I can see how he lost count there.
Yeah, I'm surprised he didn't lose control,
Yeah,
because I would not have sat there patiently waiting. Like, to me, and I'm not victim blaming, understand that.
right, of course.
But it's crazy to me that they didn't think to, like, I don't know, work together to untie their binds, or I don't
he must
know.
have been terrifying. Like there must have been something that like, I don't know, or he was really good at tying. I don't know.
And yeah, and maybe, you know what, yeah, that's a good point. He was working on ships and they are really good with knots.
Yeah, exactly. He would know exactly how to do that. I mean, especially because it sounds like they were struggling to like get themselves under beds. Like they must have been really restrained.
Right. And he wasn't gone. Like, I think there was only one time he was gone for 30 minutes. Most of the time it was like 5.
Yeah, and it was just like fast.
Yeah, that's the whole fucking thing is terrifying.
It is.
And this is what I mean. Men like him, they scare the fuck out of me.
Mm-hmm.
So 2 days after the murders, Speck was identified by a drifter named Claude Lunsford. Speck, Lunsford, and another man had been drinking the evening of July 15th on the fire escape of the Star Hotel. And on the 16th, Lunsford recognized a sketch of the murderer from the evening paper and called the police, telling them that Speck was in his room at the Star Hotel.
Oh my God.
Police, however, did not respond to the call.
What?
Yep. Although records show that the call had been made.
Oh my God.
Yeah, fucking police, man.
Someone's literally reporting your murder suspect.
Yeah, and they don't take it seriously. And who knows where the Star Hotel is and what kind of reputation it has, or what kind of reputation its clientele has. But seriously, you're not even going to follow up on that?
Right, you're not even going to look weird.
Fucking ridiculous. It's too bad Jameson's not here with us tonight. He'd have a field day with this one.
He would. Oh, he would.
Speck then attempted suicide, and the Star Hotel desk clerk had to call that in around midnight.
Oh my God, so that's what they're going to fucking come for.
So Speck was taken to the Cook County Hospital at 12:30 a.m. on July 17th. At the hospital, he was recognized by a doctor who had read about the suspect having a tattoo that said "Born to Raise Hell" and saw that tattoo on Speck.
Oh my God.
So
this is taking so much.
Right? And he calls the police, and the police finally arrest Speck.
Finally, Jesus Christ.
fucking ridiculous.
That it took that much.
They were literally given that how much time sooner? It's so stupid.
Insane. At least he didn't hurt anyone in between then.
That's true, except himself, but he deserved it.
Yeah, he did deserve it.
Concerns over the recent Miranda decision that had vacated the convictions of a number of criminals meant Speck was not even questioned for 3 weeks after his arrest.
Holy shit.
Now,
right,
yeah.
because like Miranda rights kind of
Correct.
thing.
So basically, yeah, they're so afraid of fucking this up by not reading him his Miranda rights that they waited 3 weeks to question him.
That's crazy.
To me, that's bizarre. And I'm going to assume Miranda rights at that point were a new thing.
It must have been, yeah.
I'll have to look
And that they were
up.
like, we're afraid that like all evidence would be thrown away if it wasn't for that.
Well, at least they were careful.
Right. Or it was like a case of like, this was the first time someone actually got in trouble for not reading them.
Or like, well, they just said there were cases that were overturned. So yeah, so my guess is they're just afraid of fucking it up, and maybe they don't have enough practice not reading the Miranda rights, which is stupid.
Right, which is like, it's just a thing you say. Like,
I was gonna say, I think every American has that memorized now, thanks to cop TV shows.
Yeah, for real.
So a judge appointed that an impartial panel should be used to report on Speck's competence to stand trial and of his sanity at the time of the crime.
Why do they jump first to fucking sanity?
Well, they want to make sure they're going to get the guy, which
Fair.
makes sense. So a panel of 3 physicians suggested by the defense and 3 physicians selected by the prosecution, consisting of 5 psychiatrists and 1 general surgeon, were the panel that was appointed. And they deemed Speck competent to stand trial and concluded that he had not been insane at the time of the murders. While awaiting trial, Speck participated in twice weekly sessions with part-time Cook County Jail psychiatrist Dr. Marvin Ziporin.
Wow.
These continued after Speck's transfer from the hospital to the correctional facility. Now, Ziporin prepared a discharge summary with depression, anxiety, guilt, and shame among Speck's emotion, but also a deep love for his family. So this guy, almost like he doesn't understand the assignment.
Yeah, maybe he doesn't. I don't know. That's weird. But also, I guess he's doing a thorough evaluation. He's going to ask about all that stuff. But weird.
I guess. But this is the 60s. So maybe, I know really psychiatry didn't come into stride until the 70s, but it's still fucking weird.
It is weird.
He gave not a diagnosis, but he did make note that Speck had an obsessive compulsive personality and a, quote, Madonna prostitute, unquote, attitude towards women.
Mm-hmm.
Ziporin maintained Speck viewed women as saintly until he felt betrayed by them for some reason, at which point hostility developed.
Mm-hmm.
Speck was also diagnosed with organic brain syndrome.
The fuck is that?
You know what? We might have to look that one up. I'm not sure.
I've literally never heard of that before. Hold on.
Okay.
Organic brain syndrome. Oh, okay. It's now called neurocognitive disorder, which just refers to the fact that a disease, illness, condition, or injury is having an adverse effect on an individual's mental abilities and cognition. So basically that his conditions are having an adverse impact on himself and it's getting worse.
Okay. Weird. Yeah. So he basically said that his organic brain syndrome resulting from injuries earlier in his life stated that he was competent to stand trial, but insane at the time of his crimes because of the effect of alcohol and drugs on his organic brain syndrome.
Interesting.
Yeah. Garbage.
Interesting.
Dr. Ziporin did not testify for the defense or the prosecution, as both sides were troubled to learn before the trial that Ziporin was writing a book about Speck for financial gain.
Yep, that's not someone you want to be. Nope.
No. Ziporin also earned the ire of the Cook County Jail, which fired him as its part-time psychiatrist the week after Speck's trial ended.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. At some point during his interviews with Speck, Ziporin had obtained a written 3-sentence consent from Speck, authorizing him to tell, quote, what I'm really like, unquote.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
This doctor's whack as fuck.
Well, Zipporah would publish the biography of Speck in 1967.
That's fucking crazy.
Speck later claimed he had no recollection of the murders, but he confessed the crime to Dr. Leroy Smith at the Cook County Hospital. Dr. Cook did not testify because the confession was made while Speck was sedated.
Mm-hmm.
Illinois Supreme Court Justice John Stamos, not
What?
that actor. Yeah. The state attorney for when Speck was tried, who knew the hospital confession, stated, quote, "We didn't need it. We had an eyewitness." Yeah, they have a witness. They're not worried about his confession.
Right, exactly.
Speck confessed to the murders for the first time in public when he spoke to the Chicago Tribune in 1978.
Wow.
Yeah, many, many years later.
That's a lot later.
In a film that inmates made at the Stateville Correctional Center in 1988, Speck recounted the brutal murders in detail.
Ugh.
He again stated he was high that night, but then he undercut the idea that the drugs were a mitigating factor, asserting that he could have done it while sober.
Ugh. Really just admitting to it.
Yeah,
weird as fuck.
He's a fucking idiot. Just across
Yeah, this guy's
the board.
weird.
So Speck's jury trial began on April 3rd, 1967, with a gag order on the press, which I'm amazed they pulled off.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So in court, Speck was positively identified by the sole surviving student nurse, Corazon Amoro. When Amoro was asked if she could identify the killer of her fellow students, she rose from her seat in the witness box, walked directly in front of Speck, and pointed her finger at him, nearly touching him, and said, "This is the man." So
Damn.
good for her.
Yes, that's power move.
That's fucking awesome. In addition, police testified that the fingerprints at the scene matched that of Richard Speck, kind of obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And on April 15th, after only 49 minutes of deliberation, the jury found Speck guilty and recommended the death penalty.
That's real quick.
Real quick. But I mean, really, you got the guy.
Yeah, I mean, it's open and shut case.
The only thing they don't have is like video evidence at this point.
Right.
On June 5th, the judge sentenced Speck to die in the electric chair, but granted an immediate stay pending automatic appeal, which I guess is a thing in Chicago or Illinois.
Interesting.
The Illinois Supreme Court subsequently upheld his conviction and death sentence. And now here's a strange twist. In December of 1965 and March of 1966, Nature and The Lancet published findings by British cytogeneticist Patricia Jacobs and colleagues of the Chromosome Survey of Patients at Scotland's only security hospital for the developmentally disabled. Right? That's a lot. It's a mouthful.
Okay. That is a lot.
9 of the patients, ranging from 5'7" to 6'2" in height, were found to have exact Y chromosomes, the XYY syndrome.
Interesting.
Now, Jacobs hypothesized that men with XYY syndrome are more prone to aggressive and violent behavior than males with the normal XY. But the idea was later shown to be incorrect. However, at this point, this complicates the fuck out of Speck's conviction, because in August of 1966, a Swiss endocrinologist and geneticist at Vanderbilt University in Nashville spoke to Speck's attorney, who was reportedly planning to go with an insanity defense.
Mm-hmm.
He suggested, based on Jacobs' unsubstantiated theory that Speck's height of 6'1", that Speck might have the XYY syndrome.
Interesting.
It's so fucking bizarre.
So weird and specific and weird, like it's grasping for straws.
Well, and the weird part is it's not coming from Speck or his attorney. This is coming from scientists outside.
Right. And they're like, hey, your patient's kind of above average height.
Yeah, your patient that just murdered 8 fucking innocent people, maybe he didn't do it because he's a psychopath. Maybe it's because of his genome.
Yeah, weird. And also, like, as if that makes him innocent.
It's really weird, yeah.
Like, you don't get away with something just because it's your natural tendency to be more violent. It doesn't matter.
Exactly.
You still did it.
So a chromosome analysis performed the following month by Engel revealed that Speck had a normal XY chromosome.
Mm-hmm.
So was just a waste of time, really.
Just a weird little theory.
So after Speck's conviction and death sentence were upheld by the Illinois Supreme Court later that year, and the appeals process then moved to the federal court systems, the articles about this XYY kept coming up, and they kept trying to use it to get him leniency. Just so fucking weird.
So fucking weird.
And I'm not kidding. I'm literally skipping through some notes that I have on here because I don't think we really need to cover too much about this. But it goes on for a while where they just keep trying to push it.
So fucking weird.
So on June 28th, 1971, the U.S. Supreme Court, citing their June 3rd, 1968 case Witherspoon versus Illinois decision, upheld Speck's conviction but reversed his death sentence because more than 250 potential jurors were unconstitutionally excluded from his jury because of their conscientious or religious beliefs against capital punishment.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so it's kind of weird. They were
yeah,
basically
like
told
weird,
that,
like just like I don't know.
well, they
process things.
Yeah, like they're when they were selecting the jury, if they knew that they wouldn't go for the death penalty, they were passed over for jury.
Yeah, which you can't do that.
Yeah, you definitely can't do that. So the case was remanded back to the Illinois Supreme Court for resentencing. On June 29th, 1972, in Furman versus Georgia, the U.S. Supreme Court declared the death penalty unconstitutional. So the Illinois Supreme Court's only option was to order Speck resentenced to prison by the original Cook County Court. On November 21st, 1972, Judge Richard Fitzgerald resentenced Speck to 8 consecutive sentences of 50 to 150 years in prison.
Well, there you go.
And then that was reduced to only 100 to 300 years.
Oh, is that all?
But strangely enough, it says he was denied parole in 7 minutes at his first parole hearing.
Like, why would he have parole at all?
I don't know. In 1976. And he was denied 6 subsequent times in 77, 78, 81, 84, 87, and 90.
Damn, he kept trying.
So apparently 100 to 130 years still allows you to apply for parole in less than 10 years.
Yeah, that's fucking weird.
Yeah, that confused the shit out of me. So while incarcerated at the Statesville Correctional Center, Speck was given the name Birdman after the film Birdman of Alcatraz because he kept a pair of sparrows that flew into his cell.
Huh.
He was described as a loner who kept a stamp collection and enjoyed listening to music. His contacts with the warden included requests for new shirts, a radio, and other mundane items. See, I have a feeling that this environment was probably better for Speck.
Yeah, the structure.
Yeah, it's really
and
weird.
Like not having access to his vices, probably good for him.
Well, it's funny that you say that.
Oh, funny that I say that, huh?
So the warden had described him as basically a big nothing doing time. But Speck was often caught with drugs and distilled moonshine.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Now, punishment for these infractions never stopped him, and he is quoted having said, "How am I going to get in trouble? I'm here for 120 years."
That's such a valid... Like,
Yeah.
I guess they can put you in solitary, but like other than that, if you're already in there, what are they going to do?
Exactly. Now, Speck loathed reporters and granted only one press interview in 1978 to the Chicago Tribune. During that interview, he publicly confessed to the murders, which we said earlier, and said that he thought he would get out of prison, quote, between now and the year 2000, unquote.
Interesting.
At which time he hoped to run his own grocery store business.
What a weird fucking dude.
Yeah.
That's your dream?
Right?
You get out of prison for murder?
So now the interviewer, Green, asked him if he compared himself to other celebrity killers. Now, at the time, this is before a lot of the big serial killers. So at the time, the big one was John Dillinger, who was like a bank robber, mafia type guy. And Speck replied, "I'm not like Dillinger or anybody else. I'm a freak."
I mean, he's not wrong.
He's definitely not wrong. Speck stated that at the time of the killings that he had no feelings, but things had changed. Quote, "I had no feelings at all that night. They said there was blood all over the place. I can't remember. It felt like nothing. I'm sorry as hell for those girls and for their families and for me. If I had to do it all again, I would be a simple house burglar.
Wow, that's an interesting conclusion.
Right? So Speck's final thought for the American people, which I'm guessing is a question they asked him, quote, just tell them to keep up their hatred for me. I know it keeps up their morale, and I know what I do with, and I don't know what I'd do without it.
Huh. Hmm.
I think most people moved on, buddy.
Yeah, I don't think everyone's spending their time being motivated by you, my friend.
Not at all. Now, in his book Mindhunter, Inside the FBI's Elite Serial Crime Unit, which is what the TV show is based on, John E. Douglas of the FBI's Behavioral Science Unit refers to a telling prison incident Speck revealed to him during an interview. Speck found an injured sparrow that had flown in one of his windows and nursed it back to health. When it was healthy enough to stand, he tied a string around its leg and had it perched on his shoulder. At one point, the guards told him that pets weren't allowed, and Speck said, I can't have it. And then he walked over to a spinning fan and threw the bird into it.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, the horrified guard said to him, I thought you liked that bird. And Speck said, I did, but if I can't have it, no one can. Yeah. Fucking crazy, man.
Yeah, this man's out of fucking control.
In May of 1996, Chicago television news anchor Bill Curtis received videotapes made by the Stateville Correctional Center in '88 from an anonymous attorney. In this video, which was shown publicly for the first time before the Illinois state legislature, they pointed out explicit scenes of sex, drug use, and money being passed around by prisoners who seemingly had no fear of being caught. So somehow someone snuck a video camera into this place, and they're videotaping what's really happening. At one point in the center of the frame was Speck performing oral sex on another inmate, sharing a large quantity of cocaine with a different inmate. He was parading around in silk panties, sporting female-like breasts, allegedly grown using smuggled hormone treatments.
What the shit?
Yeah. And he was boasting, quote, if they only knew how much fun I was having, they would turn me loose, unquote.
What the fuck? What? It's insane that he's getting access to all this shit. Like, he has even the resources to smuggle it. Like, it's hard to do that shit. You have to pay a lot of money for it. Like, where is he getting that?
I don't think it's just him. I think the prison is so lax that everybody's doing it.
That's crazy.
Absolutely fucking crazy. So from behind the camera, a prisoner asks Speck if he had killed the nurses, to which Speck responds, sure I did. When asked why, Speck shrugged and jokingly said, it just wasn't their night.
Ooh. Fucking hate that.
When he was asked how he felt about himself in the years since, he said, quote, like I always felt. I had no feeling. If you're asking me if I felt sorry, no, unquote.
Ugh. Yeah, he's a
piece of shit.
Yeah, he's a fucking case.
He also described in detail the experience of strangling someone.
Oof.
Quote, it's not like TV. It takes over 3 minutes and you have to have a lot of strength, unquote.
Ugh.
Yeah, it's some scary shit.
That's really fucking horrifying.
Shortly before December 5th, 1991, Speck was transported from the Statesville Correctional Center to the hospital in Joliet, Illinois, after complaining of severe chest pains. Speck died later in the early morning hours of December 5th of what is believed to be a heart attack just 1 day shy of his 50th birthday. The coroner stated that Speck had an enlarged heart, emphysema, and clogged arteries, which most likely contributed to his fatal heart attack.
That'll do it.
Speck's sister feared his grave would be desecrated, so she had him cremated, and his ashes were scattered in an undisclosed location in the Joliet area. Now, that's the end of that story, but I do want to take a moment to remember the victims. These women literally did nothing wrong in life and were only at their dorm studying to be nurses. And I didn't really go into their names before, so I want to do that now. And I apologize for how badly I may butcher some of these names. Gloria Jean Davy was 22. Suzanne Bridget Ferris, 21. Merlita Ornardo Gargulo, 23. Mary Ann Jordan, 20. Patricia Ann Matusik, 20. Valentina D. Pesson, 24. Nina Jo Schmalley, 24. And Pamela Lee Wilkening, 20.
They were so young.
Yeah,
Ugh.
they're all students. And the sad part is all of them could have gone on to save people's lives.
And yeah, they would have.
Yeah. And this fucking guy. And that is the crazy fucked up case of Richard Speck.
Damn. Fuck
Yeah.
this guy.
Yeah, he's a piece of shit. And you know, it's too bad he actually got to enjoy anything in prison. What the fuck?
Yeah,
is
I'm
that?
like, I'm actually like mad about that.
Yeah, I mean, granted, he's, you know, I'm not even going to say like what he was doing, you know, obviously performing oral sex on a man. He seemed to be enjoying it. So I won't even say that was a punishment.
Yeah, I mean, clearly he was getting into it.
It's fucking nuts. How the hell do you get hormones smuggled into a prison to the point
That's what
where
I'm
you...
saying. Like, do you know how hard it is to get hormones like prescribed to you?
I don't, but like,
It's hard, and he's just getting them smuggled into prison.
That's fucking crazy. And
And
how?
this is like 50, 60 years ago.
Yeah, I don't get it.
It's
just
insane.
don't get it. Yeah, it's fucking crazy.
Insane. That like, I don't know, that's crazy. That he even thought to do that, like, it's weird, and it's, I don't know. Fuck him.
Yeah, exactly. He
Fuck
was a
this guy.
scumbag who made nothing but a series of bad decisions throughout his life. And at the very end, like I said, asking that one girl if she was the one in the yellow dress, to me, that's like she stood out for some reason. That's why he targeted that house. And 8 people lost their lives because he was a fucking loser.
Yeah, and it's just like so terrifying that like you can just like stand out to someone one day and they'll be like, "Yep, I'm gonna fucking kill you."
Well, that happens with a lot of the way serial killers pick their victims.
Yeah,
You, for whatever reason, you caught their attention that day. And,
that shit's scary.
It is. And like, well, you know, we talk about it like oftentimes it's opportunity. They happen to be hiding at this place and you happen to be the one passing by. But the
Mhm.
idea that you stood out and he kept coming back around is the scarier part.
Yes. And it just seems so random and so like there's nothing you can do to stop this from being you.
Yeah, because it just happened to be. Yeah. Like, and it's crazy because I don't even know if he necessarily had a victim profile because this is the only time he ever did it.
Yeah, and it was like that was the only time he ever like he obviously lived an entire life of crime, but like
Well, he
he
did
never
sexually
murdered.
assault. Yeah, he did sexually assault a couple people.
Right. And so like that is a pattern.
Right, but I do think that the reason the murder started was because those 2 that came, the last 2 that arrived that tried to run, he killed them because at that point I don't think he realized he could have maybe tied them up. Yeah, I don't think he wanted to take the time.
Right, exactly. And then
So
he felt kind of stuck.
Right, so once he kills them, well, now he's got witnesses.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and if it wasn't for Cora hiding as well as she did, you know, who knows?
Right. Who knows if or when he would have been caught, like
Yeah, he might not have been caught at all. If there wasn't a witness to give a description of him and that tattoo,
for real.
that would have been crazy because he would have been saved at the hospital.
Right.
Ugh, fucking crazy.
Yeah. Really
Mhm.
fucking crazy.
Yeah. So yeah, that is the insane case of Richard Speck. Thank you everyone for listening. That was episode 45, I believe. If I'm wrong, I'll edit it. But yeah, thanks everyone for joining us again. We'll see you next week. I am Janus Dead.
And I'm Joyous Dead.
And we'll see you soon.
Bye.